He has 1 hour to escape a deadly trap using nothing but a radio.
Stop it now!
A special agent assigned to the Presidential Protection Division wakes up in a glass box, shrouded in complete darkness. The only light comes from a timer counting down the minutes. Confused and unable to remember how he got there, Jeremy starts to panic and looks for a way out of his predicament. Struggling to stay calm, the U.S. Secret Service agent tries to break the box, but nothing works. Trapped in a confined space and under intense psychological pressure, his years of experience in special operations help him maintain control over his emotions. Jeremy suspects that Dietrich Morgan, a man to whom he owes a huge gambling debt, is behind his kidnapping. Believing it's a cruel prank by debt collectors, he pleads for his release, promising to pay off the debt. Just before the incident, he had arrived in New York to settle his score with Morgan, and he is willing to do so in exchange for his freedom. However, no one responds to his plea, and he tries to pull himself together, all the while the ticking timer instilling a growing sense of dread. The countdown surely signifies something critical. When the timer hits 0, Jeremy hears a voice trying to communicate with him. Scanning the surroundings, he finds an old radio, which he uses to reach out to the unknown person and try to understand their motives. Through the conversation, Jeremy learns that the person on the other side is Henry Shaw, another hostage in a similar situation. Henry also has a countdown timer, and the radio is their only means of communication. Jeremy still believes they've been taken by Morgan and attempts to determine if Henry also has gambling debts. The second hostage reveals that he doesn't care for gambling and has never played cards. At one point, Jeremy hears noises outside and tells Henry to stay quiet. When the timer reaches 0 again, the car starts moving, and Jeremy realizes he's locked in the trunk. Reconnecting with Henry, Jeremy tries to figure out why they were abducted. It's clear that their captors want them to communicate, so the agent needs to learn about Henry's background. He discovers that Henry works for the State Department and has access to the White House. The conversation halts for a moment when the driver performs several dangerous maneuvers, causing the men to be thrown from side to side. Realizing the car has come to a stop, Jeremy urges Henry to scream to confirm they are near each other. Henry cries out for help, but Jeremy can't hear him. When the timer hits 0 again, bright lights flood both trunks, blinding the hostages. This allows Jeremy to inspect his surroundings and realize he's in a transparent plastic box hidden inside the car's trunk, surrounded by wires and a tube leading into the car's cabin. Soon, Jeremy receives a photograph and a flashlight as the lights in the trunk go out. Examining the photo carefully, he sees the White House with a message written on the back. The kidnappers demand that he reveal the location of several secret bunkers used by the president and vice president during national emergencies. Henry is aware of the kidnappers' demands and urges Jeremy to share whatever he knows. The special agent responds that he signed non-disclosure agreements, so he cannot reveal state secrets. The kidnapping and threats cannot change this. He is sworn to protect the nation's leader at all costs. Henry continues to insist, pleading for Jeremy to tell the criminals everything they want. Jeremy starts to suspect that Henry might be the one who kidnapped him, using psychological pressure to break him. He cuts the connection to be alone with his thoughts and surveys his surroundings again. Spotting the emergency trunk release handle from the inside, Jeremy focuses on breaking out of the plastic box but fails once more. When the timer hits 0 and starts the next countdown, the car begins to move again. Moments later, Jeremy hears a truck pass nearby and decides to try contacting its driver. He selects the right frequency on the radio and reaches Bob, the truck driver. Jeremy attempts to explain his dire situation, but the driver doesn't believe him, assuming it's a prank or some kind of joke. Jeremy convinces Bob otherwise and asks for his help identifying the car he's in. The trucker honks his horn to signal, and Jeremy clearly hears it. At that moment, a motorcycle passes by, helping him better pinpoint the vehicle's location on the road. The trucker tries to get closer, but the driver notices and evades the pursuit. Once the timer hits 0 again, the kidnappers turn on the lights in the box and call Molly, Jeremy's wife, with whom he had recently quarreled and separated due to gambling debts. Jeremy tries to explain his situation and asks for help, but she doesn't trust him. When Molly agrees to help and calls a colleague, she suddenly mentions seeing someone in the yard and abruptly ends the call. Jeremy realizes that criminals have come to his home and have likely kidnapped his wife. In a rage, he tries to damage the box but is unsuccessful, resigning himself to his fate. The car starts moving again, and for the first time, the kidnapper speaks to Jeremy via the radio. He offers to tell the location of the bunkers, but only if Jeremy reveals which one the president and his staff will go to in case of a national emergency. Jeremy proposes a deal, promising to share the state secret, but only if he's released. The kidnapper refuses, stating that Jeremy is a hostage with no right to negotiate or make demands. To prove his point, the kidnapper tortures Jeremy. As soon as the timer hits 0, he releases hundreds of bees into the box, attacking the isolated man. Jeremy contacts Henry and explains that he is allergic, and that the bee stings will cause anaphylactic shock. His attempts to protect himself or hide from the bees are futile, and soon Jeremy begins to suffocate and loses consciousness. Some time later, Jeremy regains consciousness and realizes that he has been injected, as the kidnappers want him alive. One of the criminals is a mysterious man named Marco, who is driving the car and listening to the police's radio frequency. Noticing that the vent pipe has been left open, Jeremy tries to grab Marco. Marco defends himself and injures the agent with a cigarette lighter, leaving a severe burn on his hand. The criminal reminds him that all the trials and tortures will stop once Jeremy reveals the location of the presidential bunkers, built after the events of September 11, 2001. Jeremy jokes and refuses to cooperate, but Marco is confident that sooner or later his hostage will break. When Jeremy contacts Henry again, he realizes that the second hostage also knows about the bunkers. This raises his suspicions, and he once again loses trust in his conversation partner. Henry explains that he holds a high position and communicates with representatives from the White House. Jeremy asks several provocative questions, but Henry answers them easily, proving that he can be trusted. The second hostage is willing to reveal everything he knows, but Jeremy orders him to remain silent, as state secrets are more important than a few lives. Soon, the conversation between Jeremy and Henry is interrupted by the wail of a police siren. The kidnappers, transporting them in 2 neighboring vehicles, have exceeded the speed limit and are pulled over. Marco orders Jeremy to remain silent, threatening that if he speaks, he will receive his wife's head in a package. Realizing that the kidnappers are serious and that Molly is in their hands, Jeremy obediently falls silent. A minute later, Jeremy hears that the police officer is about to let the criminals go, and he decides that national interests are more important than his own life or Molly's. Jeremy begins shouting for help, resulting in a shootout between the criminals and the officer. During the exchange of gunfire, someone shoots through the trunk, and Jeremy is hit in the leg. Ultimately, the criminals flee the scene. Some time later, Jeremy regains consciousness and realizes that he has been seriously injured. Pulling a piece of cloth from the bullet wound, he applies a tourniquet from his shirt to stop the bleeding. The robber's phone rings, but he does not answer, as he has been killed in the shootout. Thanks to the open vent, Jeremy manages to grab the mobile phone and answer a call from the criminal's accomplices. Realizing that Molly is their hostage and that they are unlikely to leave her alive, Jeremy decides to use the phone to report what has happened. He tries to contact his colleague Ben, who has recently been promoted, but Ben doesn't answer. Desperate, Jeremy calls the police and gives a detailed account of the situation. He asks them to determine his location based on the cell towers and to send a patrol to Molly's address. Hearing a dog's bark, Jeremy smashes part of the box that was damaged by the bullet, peering through the hole in the trunk. He sees the dog and realizes that he is in some kind of slums, which helps him more accurately pinpoint the possible location of the car. The police promise to arrive soon, and Jeremy notices the dog's owner. He calls the man over and offers him a good monetary reward for opening the trunk. The dog owner agrees to help, but at that moment, Marco's accomplices arrive. They execute the unfortunate man and close the hole in the trunk before driving off in an unknown direction, leaving Jeremy without any hope of rescue. The timer starts counting down again, and this time Jeremy has only 30 minutes until the next painful trial. The local police dispatcher calls the agent back to report that Molly has been kidnapped, leaving a note on the doorstep demanding confidential information. Jeremy realizes he's in a tough moral and psychological situation, but he's willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of national security. Henry contacts his fellow hostage once more, telling him that his timer has not 30, but only 15 minutes left. He senses something bad is coming, so he asks Jeremy to call his family and say goodbye on his behalf. Instead of fulfilling Henry's possible last request, Jeremy keeps trying to call Ben. At some point, he hears a news report about a series of explosions near government buildings. It turns out that these are no ordinary kidnappers, but real terrorists bent on spreading fear and panic across the country. Using cars packed with explosives, they've carried out a series of attacks to force the president into hiding. That's why they need to know the locations of all the shelters, which would allow them to find and execute the US president. After another attempt, Jeremy finally gets through to Ben and learns that he's no longer the only hostage. The terrorists have taken 8 people, including special agents, officials, and high-ranking CIA personnel. All of them are pawns in a deadly game, with the terrorists' only goal being to eliminate the president. Soon after, Jeremy's wife calls him, revealing that she's been placed in a transparent box in the trunk of a car and is being taken somewhere unknown. Molly is panicking and begs her husband to tell the terrorists everything he knows. Despite the overwhelming psychological pressure, Jeremy remains silent. He understands the consequences of what could happen and, with tears in his eyes, apologizes to his wife for all his faults. He realizes that he hasn't been the perfect husband and regrets it deeply, knowing they may both be executed soon. Henry once again urges Jeremy to call his family, as time is running out, and he feels his final moments are approaching. Jeremy calls the wife of the second hostage but is answered by one of the terrorists. He and his men have already visited Henry's family, and now all his loved ones are in mortal danger. This weighs even heavier on the agent, knowing that due to his silence, dozens of innocent people are suffering. As Henry's countdown reaches its end, the box begins filling with liquid. In his final moments, Henry asks Jeremy once more to reveal the secret of the shelter locations, but Jeremy cannot bring himself to do it. Realizing he's about to drown, Henry starts praying, and then his signal fades out. At that moment, a loud explosion rings out, and the car carrying Jeremy speeds off. He tries to contact Henry and realizes that the second hostage has been used as a bomb for another attack. Soon, the news reports this, and Jeremy understands that he is next, as the time on his own timer is also running out. Ben calls his friend and informs him that there have been 5 explosions so far, but no one can track the terrorists to stop the next one. They move quickly and are always one step ahead of the special agents, making it impossible to catch them. Ben speculates that one of the hostages may have revealed the location of the bunker where the president went. If that's the case, the terrorists are already heading there, and Ben is the only one who can stop them. He urges Jeremy to reveal the bunker's location, but the agent doesn't trust anyone, not even his own friend. Jeremy can't disclose the secret, so he asks to direct all efforts to finding and rescuing Molly. With only 10 minutes left on the timer, the terrorists establish a direct connection with a news anchor. Jack Stern is actively following the situation and wants to interview Jeremy, as he is one of the hostages. The agent asks for the dialogue to be stopped, insisting that the journalist is only fueling the chaos and adding to the moral pressure on Americans. Jack ignores the request and asks a few questions, but Jeremy evades answering. At that moment, a police car rams into Jeremy's vehicle, initiating a chase after the criminals. During the pursuit, both cars crash, but the criminals manage to escape from the police once again. They give Jeremy one last chance to reveal everything, but he remains silent. The terrorists promise to end the conversation and close the trunk, which breaks Jeremy's resolve. The agent finally agrees to tell them everything he knows and pleads for them to release him, struggling to hold back tears. The terrorists begin negotiations, but Jeremy realizes that these are Americans, not mercenaries from other countries. This realization gives him confidence that this small group of traitors will be exposed and caught. Regaining hope, Jeremy declares that he will not reveal any state secrets and is ready to endure any form of torture. Molly calls her husband again, explaining that she's being transported somewhere. She realizes she's in an ambulance but can't get out of the transparent box. At the same time, it becomes clear that Jeremy is being transported in a police car. The terrorists are using special vehicles to avoid police checkpoints. The sirens help them bypass traffic jams and get through roadblocks without inspection, allowing the criminals to get dangerously close to government buildings. Realizing this, Jeremy answers Ben's call and provides some crucial information. There are only a few minutes left to find and rescue him and Molly, but Ben can't help. Soon, the terrorists call Jeremy and tell him that this is his last chance to reveal the bunker location of the president. Molly and her wedding ring indicate that she's in danger. Time is running out, and Jeremy has never been in such a difficult situation, but he still can't betray the secret that threatens the president's safety. Molly calls him again, pleading for him to tell the kidnappers what they want. It's hard for him, but he says goodbye to her, begging for her forgiveness for everything he's done. Jeremy knows that they will both be killed soon, but he remains loyal to his vow of silence. As soon as the timer finishes its countdown, the box begins to fill with liquid. Jeremy realizes it's gasoline for a more powerful explosion, and he has only a few minutes left. Ben calls again, demanding the secret, as it's Jeremy's last chance. Jeremy uncovers the truth about his best friend, realizing that Ben is working for the terrorists. Ignoring him, Jeremy prepares to face his death with dignity. Trying to breathe through the hole in the box proves futile, and Jeremy begins to drown. At the last moment, he's freed and pulled out of the trunk. Jeremy attacks his rescuer and takes the weapon, threatening everyone around. It turns out that the person who saved him is Henry, alive and completely unharmed. Moreover, the entire situation was a special agent training exercise. Ben, the truck driver, the dog owner, and others were all participants in this one-man performance. Jeremy has passed the toughest test to prove that he wouldn't reveal the president's bunker location when real terrorists are involved. Molly also participated in the experiment to create maximum emotional pressure on her husband. Jeremy handled it brilliantly and can now go to the hospital, where his wounds will be stitched up and he can rest. Molly decides to accompany him, helping him understand that everything was just a test. Noticing the Washington Monument outside the window, Jeremy smiles, and his wife realizes that the bunker where the president is hiding is located beneath it. She asks him about it, but he doesn't think it's important. Instead, he takes out his wedding ring and asks Molly to be his wife again. Delighted that everything is over, his wife kisses Jeremy, then pulls a radio wire from his shirt. It becomes clear that all these people, including Molly, are terrorists who outwitted Jeremy to find out the president's location. After revealing the bunker's location, Molly decides to get rid of her husband and places a gas-filled mask on his face. The main character is under immense stress and isolation, receiving only minimal and conflicting information. How do these conditions impact his reasoning and decisions? What strategies could prove more effective in such a high-pressure situation? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.